Okay, so here's the second part in which he goes into where the supposed toxicity comes from and what happens exactly and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna continue here.
In my last video on this topic, I talked about how most of the toxicity in the Monster Hunter community is centered around DPS. Whether you're giving it or receiving it, that's the one thing we criticize each other the most about. Are you doing enough damage? Is your set good enough? Are you playing the game the right way, meaning as fast as possible? I left you guys with a question. Is this focus on DPS above all else a positive thing, or does it come with a price? And what does speedrunners have to
Okay, so I think this is a loaded statement again because the right way as fast as possible and pulling your own weight are just completely different things, and he equivocates them here. In multiplayer hunts, for example, you have a scaling in Rise, so that comes with the expectation that you at least make up for the HP increase that you caused by joining the quest. It doesn't mean exactly the same thing as being asked to speedrun the game, like, how I explained in part 1.
do with all this anyway? Can't I just give them a break? After you finish watching this video, I'm confident that you'll have a greater appreciation for the true effects that speedrunners and meta chasers have on the rest of us. For every game on the planet, the meta for that game is defined by what the player base as a whole is doing to be more successful. This works because most games that develop a strong meta are player versus player, a situation where there are very well-defined rules but very little predictability, and there's a very clear record of who is winning more. The meta changes with the ebb and flow of players coming into the game, bringing their creativity and watching strategies spread through the community based on what is actually working. Sure, things change when the developers make adjustments to the game, but most of the meta comes from what actually works in real-world scenarios for real people. Monster Hunter, however, is a very notable exception. The meta for Monster Hunter is not defined by what works for most people in most scenarios. The Monster Hunter meta is defined by what works for a very, very tiny subset of people in artificially created scenarios that nearly all players do not ever encounter in the game.
Okay, so that's not true. First of all, games that are purely or mostly single player also have a meta. So the idea that a non-competitive game can't have a meta is just completely untrue. Um, and this also has nothing to do with unpredictability. For example, time trials in racing games, they have a meta. Um, You could say that speedrunning is the competitive aspect of it, but that's only half true because a lot of people just want to beat their personal time, develop a ghost, or get a certain rank by the rank system. And using a meta setup gets them there more easily or might even be required depending on the track. Nier Automata or Bayonetta, for example, are single player games, and not everyone competes for times or scores, and there's still an incentive to make more efficient builds and use certain combos that are considered the strongest to get through the stage more easily or get a certain rank or reward or collectible. In Yakuza Kiwami, it's a single player game, and I have yet to meet anyone who doesn't think Tiger Drop is OP, isn't OP. And it's not really about beating other players, it's just about using more optimized strategies and tactics to get through the game more easily and efficiently.
In short, the meta comes from what speedrunners demonstrate and dictate based on their experience playing a game that the rest of us are not actually playing. Here are a few examples to illustrate what I mean by that. Speedrunners
Okay, so I agree with a broad point here actually, so I'll get that out of the way first. I agree that people focus too much on speedrunners. For example, I think Longsword in Generations Ultimate is severely overrated because the bulk of its damage comes from pulling off counters and punishing the monster efficiently. It can create openings and turns monster attacks into opportunities and deals a lot of damage in the process. However, if I see many people run it, think they're hot shit for using the meta playstyle, and still get average times that are perfectly achievable with Striker or something, because they don't capitalize on the counters as much as speedrunners and run out of Valor more than once, and that reduces the uptime of their amazing moveset significantly, and that kind of defeats the point of using that style. Um, I've also seen people run Hayabusa sets to maximize their DPS with just one more level crit eye or crit eye 2 instead of challenger 1 to get one shot by the monster because their death sucks balls, and dropping one level of crit eye would have prevented this by letting them have 150 more defense. So these things do happen. However, there's some seriously bad rhetoric that's going on here, and I think that permeates the whole video. You see, he does this thing where he makes two agreeable statements and then follows up with a debatable statement where the bulk of his argument lies, and then equivocates them. So to him, if I disagree that speedrunners play a completely different game, I'd also disagree that there are situations where going off meta may be more beneficial to the average player. So keep that in mind, that I do not disagree that you can get better results if you stray off the meta. I don't disagree with this generally, so I just disagree that they play a completely different game, because they don't. They literally play the same game. They deal with monster moves, damage values, etc. as everyone else. They just have to do it better and more consistently. It's true that some speedruns look differently from what you do in a regular quest, such as Roku's Pathbreaker Greatsword run against Teostra, where the success and efficiency depend on the headlock. But these tend to be the exception rather than the rule, and if you watch speedruns of, say, EX Deviants, you're gonna find that such setups don't really exist for those, and those runners have to deal with the same things as a normal player has to. This also doesn't really affect how you play in most games, like how you build. For example, the Wax proc on Rathian's head will be the same during a speedrun as on any person's quest. It's not just some speedrunner magic.
Typically compete using TA rules. These rules severely limit which features of the game you can use. They don't let you use flash bombs, traps, or buddies, for example. They don't allow you to capture the monster. Sonic bombs are out, as are all barrel bombs. You're not allowed to use heroics, adrenaline, or fortify. You're not allowed to use any of the gatherable hunting helpers. Wyvern riding is severely limited. Restocking items at camp is not allowed. The official TA rules state that only the Switch versions of the game are allowed, and that cheats are not. But we have a speedrunning community on PC, and while they follow most of the TA rules, they do indeed allow cheats and mods. By the way, if you think Switch is immune to this, think again. The Switch version of Rise has been working on an emulator since launch.
Okay, so I think what's kind of wrong here, or what I want to point out, is that TA rules are not the only way to run the game, and simply the wiki's attempts to ensure that runs actually focus on weapons-only combat to prevent cheese threats that might create a rigid or frustrating speedrun meta. There are also tons of non-TA runs out there and people watch them and run them all the time. So the wiki's TA rule set is just one of the rule sets that exists and serves to moderate the leaderboards in particular.
And mods are fully supported in emulation too, as well as network play. You think that guy who posted his Switch speedrun is actually playing it on a Switch? We'll never really know, will we? So
Well, we do. Literally, the runner said so in the comments. Like, they are on screen right now. And something like detecting fake charms is as easy as looking them up on a spreadsheet. It's just really rude and uncalled for accusation of the whole community.
let's take a look at just a few of the cheats and mods that are used extensively for speedruns on both Switch and PC, and that are generally accepted by the PC speedrun community.
Okay, so now let's go over the cheat list because I think it reveals some half-truth and some outright lies that are pretty slanderous and unfair towards the people running this game.
First, we've got hack charms that have a 1 in 10 million chance of you actually getting in the game. Now, the player base isn't even 10 million people, so just think about that for a minute.
Okay, so hack charms, they are not allowed by the TA rules, and it's very easy to do and agreed on by the community. Look, this is something the speedrun community constantly debates. Like, see the intro cutscene skipping mod of Mario Sunshine that people have been fighting over for over a decade. This is not a toxicity problem, but rather a debate about the parameters of that runs are allowed to follow to level the playing field. So more on that in a bit. But I think it's also super funny that he mentions that charms have a 10 millionth chance of spawning, which is hilarious because he thinks not even 10 million people playing means no one can get these charms, because that's not how probabilities work. And people roll far more charms than a single one in all of their time playing. And there are a lot more than one charm that are considered optimal. And also look at the downloads of the mods. I mean, you have the hack charm mod
Extensively for speedruns on
where
both
you
Switch
can
and PC, and
modify your
that are
charms to
generally
your
accepted
liking.
by the PC speedrun community.
And
First, we've got hack charms.
you know, there's a total download of almost 500,000 and unique downloads of almost 200,000.
That have a 1 in
And
10 million chance of you actually getting in the
that's
game.
very
Now, the player
strange.
base isn't even 10 million.
I also think it's very disingenuous of him to show a zooming screenshot of the bypass legal charms hack in the same sentence as he's implying no one could realistically get god charms. Because first of all, look at the downloads. This one is only 10k downloads. So, and also like speedrunners will simply get caught if they use cheated charms or legal charms, because you can simply look them up and disqualify their runs. It's as simple as looking them up on a spreadsheet. And again, that's incredibly mean to imply that everyone does this, and it's totally uncalled for and not even true.
People. So just think about that for a minute. They've got cheated augments that, again, are statistically impossible to get in game. Here's
And again, cheated augments, same as charms, look at the downloads. People use these cheats because they don't find augment grinding fun, and many people do it. This is not a super secret evil speedrunner thing to do, and again, statistically impossible is not how probability works. For example, that is literally not how it works. You can get these charms. I got a PS10 attack 10, a PS5 attack 10 triple slot charm in GU legitimately. And a friend of mine got a Tenderizer 6 Thunder Attack 13 triple slot twice, even legitimately. So it's not impossible to get these, just kind of rare. And also, speedrunners use these because they get uncompetitive times if everyone does it and they don't. So a lot of the time it's just there to shave off like 3 seconds. It doesn't actually change how you play the game.
a cheat to control where the monster loads. Here's one to ensure that it has the lowest health value. Looking for 100% success on food skills? How about automatically eating? How about automatically posting the quest? You can even skip the carve timer and return from the quest immediately.
Okay, so these are all mods that simply decrease the RNG and time between hunts to decrease the amount of resets needed to actually start fighting the monster. Nothing about them change how you approach the monster and how you have to deal with their moves or anything like that. It's purely a quality of life change that reduces the tedium between hunts. And again, look at the downloads. Everyone likes these, and they're just quality of life that everyone uses. It's not a speedrunner thing.
How about 60 iframes? And if all that's not enough,
Okay, that last point is just disgustingly misleading because it mentions a band cheat that modifies how you interact with the monster in the same breath as quality of life mods that just reduce wait time and reset worthy RNG. And he prefaces the list with it's just a few mods that everyone uses extensively and that are accepted. And that's just not true. No one accepts this mod. And again, it's just 4,000 downloads and no evidence that any speedrunners use it. It's just incredibly misleading and unfair towards speedrunners. Speedrunners also don't just cheat undetected. If they do, their runs get removed from the leaderboards and they risk their reputation. There's thousands of people watching these runs, hundreds of which also run the game and have a deeper understanding of what's going on in these runs. And there's also dozens of moderators whose job it is to catch cheaters who watch these runs before they get verified. And if someone does get caught, it's always a huge drama and their behavior is rightfully condemned. He's making it look like cheating is just an everyday occurrence and runners use mods to deceive their audience when that's simply not true.
some speedrunners will actually commission a modder to make them a custom cheat. For example, one that modifies part break values, or motion values, or even the chance to proc certain skill effects.
Okay,
And since it's a custom made mod, only they have access to it, and they can keep it secret until and unless they get caught.
okay. So, as for the commissioned mod, I think it speaks for itself that he's using the Team Darkside highest damage number value, in which Chris explicitly clear about modding the game, that he does not condone such a cheat's usage in speedruns, that the video is not a speedrun, and explained why he uses the mod and how exactly it works, to just to make a point about how speedrunners cheat and deceive their viewers. If Chris claims that it took over 100 attempts is true, then it's pretty easy to see why he would use such a mod, because it reduces a 1 in 3,000 chance to 1 in 100. Considering this is just for a science video, I don't see how this is a problem. And also, just look at that.
Now, I want to be completely transparent and honest with you guys here. We are strictly against modifying anything damage related for speedruns or any competitive situation of any video game, not just Monster Hunter. But this video here is not a speedrun, and it's already incredibly difficult to pull off, let alone impossible, with Brutal Strike's activation chance. And we don't intend to change our damage, we simply intend to increase the chance of activating Brutal Strike. So let me explain exactly what facts he did so you guys actually get to see this otherwise impossible video. He basically assigned the caps lock key on the keyboard to the Brutal Strike activation chance. By pressing this key, the game would automatically increase the Brutal Strike activation chance to 100%. But not only that, this key will also increase the negative crit chance from 15% to 100%. Essentially nerfing our greatsword by 85% more negative affinity. All of these attack buffs on the left get us to an attack value of 715. Now, times 1.32 from what.
Okay, so that's what the mod did, and he even shows like the exact lines of the code and what they do in a corresponding explanation. So I do not see how this is misleading at all. And also that
Proc
second
certain skill
screenshot,
effects. And since it's a custom
that is from the Peppo controversy. And that was immediately called out. It was a huge deal, created a lot of drama, and it was one of the major reasons why Peppo left Team Darkseid. So this was not an everyday occurrence. It was a huge deal and a turning point in their YouTube career. I don't think Iixxion should imply that the whole speedrunning community is doing this, when that's just a one-time thing that everyone was against and had huge consequences. And again, the implication that they can just do this undetected is stupid, because that one was literally immediately found out after the video in question was uploaded, and it was later deleted.
Made mod, only they have access to it, and they can keep it secret until and unless they get caught. As you can see, this is nothing at all like the Monster Hunter game that I'm playing. It's not just a stripped down version of the game, it also includes things that aren't in the game. It includes changes to the game so extensive that it's no longer possible to legitimately state that they're playing Monster Hunter anymore. They're playing an entirely different game from the one that you and I and millions of other people play every single day. And then they
Okay, well, that's not true, because it absolutely is the same game. It's just a specific aspect of the game they focus on. And the mods they're using is effectively just serve as quality of life improvements for this specific type of play to iron out the process. And that doesn't mean it's not the same game anymore, much less that it's not Monster Hunter anymore, because it still is. Just not the whole experience, and it's not supposed to be either. No one claims that.
have the audacity to tell us that the strategies that they use in this artificial scenario are also the best ones for us to use in the actual real game scenarios?
Okay, so who exactly is us and who's they? Because there's still no examples, and no one in particular did this. And as far as I'm aware, speedrunners generally don't do this either. It's just a total straw man to divide the community into us and them, to get mad at each other.
When you ask them to explain how that makes any sense at all, they'll pull out some formulas and show you some numbers and tell you that damage is all that really matters. But this just isn't true, is it? When you strip away all of the variability from the game, when you strip away everything that has nothing to do with damage, then obviously damage is all that matters. But that's circular logic, isn't it?
Well, that's not really true, and it just contradicts itself. For one, damage is simply a modifier in your attacks. It has nothing to do with how consistently you attack or anything like that. The same attack using the same damage values on the same monster part will always return the same value. If I hit Rajang's leg with a certain amount of effective raw, it's gonna be the same damage as when a speedrunner does it with the same effective raw. And it will contribute to a certain percentage of the quest completion. For two, he's brought this up himself in the last video, explaining how ultimately the goal is to make the monster HP reach 0 or cap range, and this has nothing to do with ignoring other aspects of the game that aren't damage. It's simply what damage as a property does. And the reason people pull out the numbers and focus so much on damage is because damage is a universally desirable property, because it contributes to the goal of the game. If someone tells you how you could be doing more damage, they do so because they want to help you reach the quest completion better. It's not that other things aren't worthy of consideration, it's just that the meta ends up achieving the most efficiently.
And to think, if that's not crazy enough, it actually gets worse. You see, the other part of the artificial scenario that they've created is that you, the player, are playing perfectly. Their entire premise rests on that one single assumption, that you don't make mistakes.
Well, that's again not true. You just need to hit certain parts to get a certain amount of damage, and using a meta set just gives you the most contribution towards that.
You time everything perfectly, that your aim is 100% accurate, that you follow their script, and that as soon as you do make a mistake, you abandon the quest and use your mods to restart quickly and follow the script again from the beginning. They actually sound like those fitness influencers who claim that all we need to do is buy their supplements and training plan and we can have a body like theirs in a short time with little work. Use these armor sets, use this playstyle, and you'll be so much better in no time. And like the fitness influencers, it's all a lie. What those meatheads don't tell us is that they're using PEDs. They take drugs that reduce their body fat and increase their muscle mass. So too do the speedrunners use cheats to achieve their amazing results, as I've just outlined for you.
Okay, so let's look at the screenshots again, shall we? The first video, like a little bit back, is from Angbeta11 and is showing off a script for a farming method, and it's exactly meant to be easily understood and replicable with minimal risk of having to reset. It was made with the intent of farming hunter rank points quickly, not casual hunts, and the video simply goes over the script and explains it, and at no point does Angbeta claim this is the only way to play or that everyone should do it. For example, this is just the intro saying, oh, this is a fast farming method. This is explaining what the monster does. This is the set you should be using if you want that strategy to work. And the Palamudes apparently. This is running down the script to explain what it does and summarizing it. And here's a demo hunt. And none of this was done with cheats, or would be possible with cheats. I've had a friend use this strategy and it worked, and they weren't using cheats, so saying that is misleading people is just misleading by itself. And the second one is by Barasso. So this video, I actually found the video that was mentioned or shown here in the screen cap, and I'm just gonna play this because I think it's kind of funny.
Add some more wide range in here. Now for this last level 1 slot, we're gonna put Wall Runner Boost. It's a really underrated skill. I don't know why nobody uses it. So that's the build. We got wide wide range level a lot.
Okay, so this cheated meta set is from a troll video where the joke is that the build has 59 points in wide range, so I don't really see how this adds to the point of the video at all, and this is just completely misleading.
It's no wonder they don't have to work as hard as us to achieve much better, in fact, impossibly better results. That's not to say they didn't work hard. They've spent countless hours abandoning quests and repeating the same exact script. The lie is when they say you too can achieve similar results through simply copying their set and playstyle.
Okay, that is not true. Like, no one does this. It's just like who does this? Like, which speedrunner says like copy my build and you get speedrun times? Like, no one does this.
But we don't play the game the same way they do, right? We play it with all the randomness and variability still in there, the way the developers built it. And we play it with all of our flaws and foibles. We play it when we're too tired to even press the buttons properly, when we're too wired to calm the fuck down and just breathe. We play it on days when we suck and don't care that we suck. We play it with our children who ride around on Palamutes the entire quest because it's just that cool. And it's not just that we make mistakes.
Okay, so again, I don't think this changes anything about how the monster, like, this doesn't change anything about how the monster approaches you and what you can do to hit the monster and, like, get its health down. And it's just simply what the numbers will put out. None of the mod speedrunners use change how the fights play out. They just reduce the time spent between them while grinding for the lowest time they get. And if the monster spawns somewhere else with a higher HP roll and your charm's worse, you just lose out on a few insignificant percents of damage, walk a bit more, and take a few hits more to finish the quest. The fight doesn't really change because of this.
After all, they make mistakes too. They just deal with their mistakes differently. No, it's more than that. We play it in so many different ways because we enjoy all the variety and diversity that the game offers us. We set our own personal challenges that have meaning to us. It isn't about optimizing for one single game statistic.
Okay, so and speedrunners do not. Like I'm not sure if Ixxion's aware of that, but speedrunners typically upload their speedruns and not every single quest they initiate. They also farm for gear and also do gathering quests, and I'm sure a lot of them also explore and do all those things that he thinks they ruin for him. And in fact, I do know that some of them stream, because a lot of them stream and upload clips on Twitter and even full runs using off-meta sets and playstyles. For example, Cake of Poke is a speedrunner who uses rapid fire normal 3 versus everything in like all the games, which is very funny and entertaining. Here, Acantorex is a very good speedrunner, and he's doing a quest where he's using the Mosswine helm for a troll style. My light bowgun, for example, has a lot of runs that use completely off-meta styles like aerial bowgun or light bowgun or striker heavy bowgun. Like in this one, it's the Valor sidestep playstyle, which is not very powerful. It's just a very fun way to play. And I think to imply that no one does this, like they don't play the game that you think you play the game, that like all the other people are playing the game, that's just kind of stupid. Like I don't see how speedrunners somehow prevent anyone from doing all of those things.
That being the quest timer. You guys have already told me in the comments of previous videos literally hundreds of ways that you enjoy the game that have nothing to do with getting the best possible quest time. For many of us, it's simply about completing the quest at all. And not just the noobs either. Take me for example. I've already beat the game with the bow. Now, can I even finish a single quest successfully with a weapon I've never used before? That's something I'd like to find out. When we take all these factors into consideration, it becomes clear that speedrunners and those who push the meta are so out of touch with how the vast majority play this game that they just don't know how bad their advice really is for the rest of us. So we have one community setting unachievable goals and defining a meta for the game based on unrealistic scenarios. So what? Let them do their thing.
Okay, but like, are they? Because I'm still looking for examples of literally anyone doing this. And again, those scenarios aren't unrealistic. Just because if you're not hitting as often and consistently doesn't mean that the set is not great anymore. It's just it's still gonna return the same numbers even if you're slower and mess up more. So that's just not true.
And we'll do ours, right? If only it were that simple. I
Well,
mentioned
it
in the
is.
first video of this series how you see nearly every conversation devolve into one about DPS. We just can't avoid it even when we try. Why is DPS and the meta so entrenched in the Monster Hunter community?
Well, he answered that question himself already. Making the monster HP go away is literally the goal of the quest, and damage is how you achieve that. And like I said, damage is a desirable property, so having more damage is always going to be contributing towards the quest goal, and it's always a property worth discussing. And in Rise specifically, just joining a quest online adds extra HP to the monster, so you're gonna need to do enough damage to make up for that, or you're gonna be useless to the team.
The speedrunners are off doing their own thing on their own. How do these ideas spread so rapidly and so thoroughly amongst the entire player base?
Well, that next part is a bit strange, and I'm gonna play the whole bit before making my point, and untangle 2 points he's making.
The meta is a virus. Here's how it works. A small group of people make videos about how awesome they are at the game. They set an unachievable standard. People watch these videos, are very impressed by them, and internalize these unachievable standards. What that means is they begin to believe that the goals of the person in the video are actually their own goals and desires. They want to be as good as that guy. They see so many views, so many positive fawning comments, and they come to the false conclusion that the community as a whole also shares these values with them. After all, nobody wants to feel like they're doing something wrong. We all want to get better at the game. So people start to believe that the ones making the videos with their insane clear times must simply be better at the game. People start to believe
they
that
are.
this is how it should be done, that these are examples of the best form of gameplay possible. As a result, we see two things happen. First, we see the toxicity in the YouTube comments, in the various Monster Hunter discords, and on Red Egg GameFAQs and other message boards. People who have never done a speedrun before talking about how this or that has higher DPS, so it's better somehow. They repeat the values that they learn from watching speedrunners and those who define the meta. This constant repetition of the same talking points over and over again in so many different contexts, in turn, makes even more people feel inadequate and makes people think that even more people in the community value clear times above all else. And so the virus spreads further. The second thing that we see is the major Monster Hunter YouTube channels creating videos that further promote the speedrunner goals. The common tropes that we see include things like, this weapon is the best, this skill is the best, this is the new meta, this breaks the meta, you should be doing this. All the big channels make videos like this, and a lot of the smaller channels copy that same formula. The irony is that the biggest Monster Hunter channels are not run by speedrunners. They're run by average players like you and me. Yet, by making videos with their hyperbolic claims and their focus on damage above all else, these channels are responsible for promoting the values and attitudes of the speedrunners and the meta chasers. Whether they realize it or not, any channel that makes videos like this is promoting values that they themselves do not necessarily have, or at least values that they don't really believe in. Yet they want us to believe in it, because the more of us who do believe that DPS is king means their videos get more views.
Okay, so that's a bit strange. So look at that. The strange thing here is that this guy is also pretty much guilty of the same thing too. So let's have a look. Like, there's a thumbnail saying damage. This one is wait, hold on, where is it? There's like, maybe you suck at this. You should be using this attack and how you play like this, and all of these kinds of videos where it's like, yeah, you should play this and whatnot. Like, this is also on his channel as well. There's a bunch of qualitative statements about what's good and what you should try, and show a bunch of numbers. And it's kind of the exact same things he's complaining about. And if you think, oh well, he doesn't use the meta, then please just think about how someone's supposed to know this before clicking the video, or doesn't understand the meta, and will internalize his videos the same way that anyone watching the supposed meta chaser videos is. So I'm not really sure how is someone, like, how it's worse that someone's internalizing his values than someone else's. And again, I think it's extremely gross and dishonest to hold up a bunch of channels who have a bunch of different content, including off-meta sets and playstyles, many of which don't claim to know the one superior way of playing, as examples of channels that are toxic meta chasers who lie to you for views and only do what speedrunners do. I've gone through the list, and a lot of the videos shown are just very misrepresentative of what these people's content are. For example, Rage Gaming, they have plenty of off-meta sets, and yes, their thumbnails are clickbait, but who is he to complain? He's doing the same thing anyway. And the videos shown are mostly exaggerated. For example, the highest damage number thing he's shown. That's pretty much just a science video. The one with the great sword, it's just showing off a sleep wake up font set, which is as off meta as it gets. It's just a gimmick playstyle that they wanted to show off. And I skipped around that channel a bit, and while they do have meta sets, or what I think might be the meta based on the description of the comments, like, doesn't seem to be all of their content. So what's the big deal here? They're just offering multiple ways to play, including meta and off-meta sets. That's something he claims he has no issue with, but is criticizing him for. Eric's videos, they don't do any of what he's describing. As the videos shown here, for example this one or this one, they state within the first 20 seconds that the weapons he picked are not the meta min-max weapons, they're just weapons he thinks are cool. And the first video shown is just a favorite monster list, which doesn't even have to do anything, has anything to do with damage at all. Rurikan, I don't know, this guy seems a bit weird, but I did watch the videos shown here, and in the Charge Blade video shown on screen, in that he mentions in the first 30 seconds or so that he chose against dereliction because most players probably aren't benefiting from it due to the health problem it causes, including him, and he chose against the meta because he thinks it's more helpful to more people. The second video doesn't talk about the meta at all, and the third one is a Charge Blade guide that I don't really know how to judge, considering I don't know the Rise Charge Blade meta. But it didn't seem particularly toxic to me watching it, so just recommending what he thinks is good is not automatically toxicity or meta chasing. And once again, it's just extremely misleading and paints people as toxic who haven't done anything he's accused them of, as far as I can tell.
Skill is the best. This is the new meta. This breaks the meta. You should be doing this. All the big channels make videos like this, and a lot of the smaller channels copy that same formula. The irony is that the biggest Monster Hunter channels are not run by speedrunners. They're run by average players like you and me. Yet, by making videos with their hyperbolic claims and their focus on damage above all else, these channels are responsible for promoting the values and attitudes of the speedrunners and the meta chasers. Whether they realize it or not, any channel that makes videos like this is promoting values that they themselves do not necessarily have, or at least values that they don't really believe in. Yet they want us to believe in it, because the more of us who do believe that DPS is king means their videos get more views. Every video that glorifies or promotes meta builds is essentially akin to a super spreader event, transmitting the virus of the meta into the minds of thousands more people. So here we are, with a player base of millions of people, most of whom believe that there is some optimal way to play the game. A best weapon, a best build, a best playstyle, and that anyone who strays from this prescription is doing it wrong. I'm frequently told that any off-meta build is categorized as a meme build. The irony here is that, by the original definition of the word meme, when it comes to Monster Hunter, the meta is the meme. So how do we fix this? How do we cure people of this virus? How do we help other players enjoy the game the way they themselves choose to enjoy it, rather than trying to play it the way someone else has dictated for us, the way they feel some obligation to play it? If the meta is what makes you happy, by all means, enjoy it. But that's not most of you. In fact, judging by the thousands of comments on my videos regarding this topic, it's not even half of you that enjoy playing the meta. It's a minuscule percentage of you. And most of you who do play the meta have admitted that you do it out of a sense of obligation. There was a brilliant comment in my Discord server the other.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop here because like the last part is just like showing a bunch of anecdotes and like what seems to be like an advertisement for his Discord. But the second point, in my opinion, is ironically not too bad, but kind of misses the mark a bit. There's an analogy I think is more fitting for this, which Matthew Matosis describes in his Meta Micro videos. It's about how information behaves similarly to genes, passing on the more successful ideas and fading out the less successful ones, which isn't to say that the less successful ones are without merit or can't be beneficial to particular individuals, but they may just be less successful purely by probability in the long run. To use an example, in Generations Ultimate, let's compare Zed using a weapon capable of blocking that has 80% crit, and we have to decide between guard up and crit boost. Crit boost is a 10% boost at 80% crit, so let's say we have about 10% less hits that we have to land to kill the monster. stagger 10% more often, get the part breaks 10% faster, etc. And that versus being able to guard certain moves. So both skills are beneficial and do in fact help the player in some way. However, due to not a lot of monsters having moves that require guard up, those moves being overall fairly easy to avoid, and the existence of Adept, Valor, and Readiness, there's a pretty low amount of opportunities on average per monster to take advantage of it. Even if you required it to beat a certain quest because one of those moves poses such a huge hurdle to you, it would have to happen more than every 10th or so hunt for it to be more beneficial than crit boost. And the monster would also have to use the move that requires guard up at least every 10th time for guard up to actually be more useful, ignoring the evade arts. And as far as I'm aware, I think the only monster that you can make this argument for is Gravius out of all of the monsters in the game. So if we say we ran a simulation of 1,000 hunts, I'm pretty sure that we'd see that crit boost approaches a little less than 10% more successful hunts, faster clears, and less cards compared to guard up. And so say 100k players used both of these sets, I'd say it's pretty fair to estimate that most of them would have a better time using crit boost and would tend to recommend it more often. So by all measurable metrics of success, those being clear time, clear rate, card rate, and part breaks, crit boost tends to be as good or strictly better than guard up. The meta is just the conclusion of the community arrived at by weighing all of those skills and playstyles against each other. And speedrunning is just the logical endpoint of this elimination process under a standardized premise with the purpose of reducing the hunt time. I've also touched on this a bit in the last video, but there's where it comes into play again. The goal of the game is to make the monster HP go down, and damage is how it happens. It happens by the design of the game, so if you have two different sets and clear the quest with both of them, assuming you don't fail the quest and got what you want, the one that shows the lower quest timer is also the one that was more successful of the two, because it's the only meaningful difference that remains between the two sets. Now, the reason I think the gene analogy is better is because the virus analogy implies the meta is an external factor that runs contrary to the design of the game and intends to damage the game and its community, and that we should try to stop it. But that's not really what's going on here. It's just what happens when different traits get compared to each other and one returns a more desirable variable and ends up being more successful as a result. It happens as a result of the game's design and feedback loop. It tries to evoke in its players, and it's not something that happens despite of what the game is designed to be, but specifically because of that. And also, if you're watching this, Iixxion, I know you will probably disagree with this part, considering you're making a whole trilogy about how much people suck for thinking this, but consider this. If you said I think you said you finish most of the quests you start at one point. I think you said 97 or 99% or something like that. So I assume cards or failures aren't even like a huge factor when comparing two sets. The only remaining variable that can really be compared qualitatively is efficiency. And efficiency is what meta sets are inarguably the best at. I know there's other factors too, and not every speedrun set will be better than something else depending on the player. After all, I'm also a huge advocate of modifying sets to fit your own needs, but that's also a hugely subjective quality that you can't really apply to everyone equally, and different people will get different results. And think about how players reach the conclusion that meta sets are the best. Do you really think everyone was manipulated by a cult of toxic YouTubers who lied to them that these sets are good? Because I'm thinking you're widely underestimating how much people just enjoy dealing damage and being efficient. At the same time, I also think you're just wrong about the us versus them narrative, because it presents two camps as opposing forces and assumes everyone even knows what they are doing. In my experience, most people who run around with total garbage sets aren't doing it because they think it's their personal best way to play and they just think it's the most fun way to play. After thousands of hours of witnessing people run around with rainbow colored decorations that are activating nothing, 40 points of stamina drain or grayed out skills, that they tell me that a lot of them simply don't know what they're doing and they don't know how to build proper sets and advice will actually hugely benefit them. And I also think you might be overlooking that a lot of people just build meta sets because it's easy. They want to copy them from someone and they might not change anything about them simply because they think it's already good enough and that fits their needs perfectly fine. A lot of the time, using efficient sets and playstyles is just a way of taking a shortcut, and searching for meta SNS set Sunbreak is simply what people do to get that set quickly in turn signal to the algorithm that the video is popular. And talking about the algorithm, I think what you're also missing is that you're in your own sub-community based on people who identify with and relate to what you're talking about in your videos, and that your own videos are a place of controversy because a lot of what you're saying tends to focus on debates about efficiency, the meta, and your subjective experience that people can disagree with. If someone looks for a set, types Monster Hunter Rise good set into the search bar or gets recommended one of your videos, then makes a set and that gets compared to someone else using a meta set, then we have a place of discussion about what's better. And if someone sees your video and knows the meta, they might disagree with your approach and just let you know what's about it in your comment. And not all discussion is always friendly and productive, such as your video right now. But you've created a place that discusses the meta, attracts some same and differently minded people, and interacts with these types of discussions extremely frequently, much more than the average player. And in my own experience, these toxic players who kick everyone and are always mean to people who don't use their meta sets aren't very common in the community. I would say that from my almost 10k hours experience since playing Try. They do happen occasionally, but you can't just make a point about toxic players without lying your way to the conclusion and accuse people of things they haven't done and divide the community with unnecessary drama like this. And yes, I have read the description where you tell people who are triggered by your video that you don't actually mean it. But look, you can't just make huge sweeping statements, show examples of people who have done nothing wrong to make a point while accusing them of being toxic and cheaters, and then claim you didn't mean it in the fine print, because you did mean it. You said it right in the video. If your only intention was to shine light on the toxicity problem and want people to just let each other have fun, you would have just done so. One of my favorite Monster Hunter YouTubers, Hernie, he made such a video years ago. It's this one. And he didn't over-exaggerate the issue, accuse community members of things they haven't done or lied to prove his point. He just reminded people to take a step back and chill out. You don't have to interpret every guide or build advice in the most uncharitable way possible and misrepresent those people to make a point. Because what I'm getting from your videos is that you're some extremely pissed off dude who has an irrational hate boner for anyone who plays faster than himself, pretends this is somehow a huge issue that everyone is affected by without even a shred of evidence that it even happened once, not even a screenshot of a Reddit post with enough upvotes to believe it's a commonly held opinion, then proclaims there's a vague evil conspiracy against a silent majority who are actually playing the game the real way, and then lies about who does it and tells himself he's the good guy for finding the culprit. I don't think this helps anyone, and I implore you to do some self-reflection and reconsider some of your points, or perhaps even apologize to some of the people you've misrepresented and slandered like that. If you really want to help this community, you should not need to resort to these measures because they just end up dividing the community even more, and they make you look like an ass. Reflect on what kind of content you're producing, what kinds of people it attracts, what kind of problem this creates, and think about whether this is really a problem that affects everyone to this extent and this frequently, and what means you have resorted to push this narrative. I think you can do better than that.